The King of Kings who was raised to set
Blow the trumpet. It's the morning star rising from the sunset. Bring it back home like a conquest. In that great shout, hallelujah, like a gun clap. One crown, one throne, one chair. Angakona unwana. Inena ntena nibula bula. Inena yatinena pula pula. Ngena, the champ is here and not to defend his title. To put an end to your defeat cycle. To humble the exalted and to exalt the humble. The weakness of every challenge is pride. If you see a high horse, don't take it right. He who wants to battle, let him strangle himself. Put a mic cord, your arms to shot to box.
Briefly go through the story of Samson in the Bible. So I'll just do a recollection from my Christian days, from my memory, from my Christian days. So in the story, from my recollection, if anybody wants me to go to the actual scriptures, we can still do that. But I'll start with my recollection. And before I go to Samson, I'd like to basically break down why this story of Samson is key, or is the most perfect example we can give of the state of black masculinity today. So Samson in the Bible is grows up in a family where he is, or God tells his mother, remember this from my recollection, so a bit of an error there is allowed, so that he would be a Nazarite. He should not eat certain things. He should live a rather life of a Nazarite is like it's similar to you basically live a life of a sacred oath in a way. I'm just looking for the word the term that I'm looking for. I'm not finding it, but he was not to touch dead things, and his mother was not supposed to cut his hair and things like that. And from the legend, his hair then became the source of his physical strength and power. And what Samson is really known for in the Bible is his enormous physical strength, where one of the most famous stories is that he killed a lion with his bare hands. So, and he fought with the Philistine armies, because in the story, one of the greatest enemies of the Hebrews, the Habiru, are the Philistines, amongst the many enemies that they had. And so he fought with the Philistines using a jawbone of an ass, which also kind of broke his Nazarite vow. Yeah. So, and the reason it broke his Nazarite vow is because he was not supposed to touch dead things. And even the lion that he killed, he went and saw some from the because of the lion. After, I guess it was after years, I think, I don't know how long it would take for bees to actually build up honey in a carcass of a lion after he killed it. And so, since he is portrayed in the story as a very muscular man, or a very physically strong, because physical strength is part of the attributes of masculinity, as part of the attributes. And a man who is very physically well built and very strong can easily be mistaken for a masculine man, or rather a man that is an epitome of masculinity. Because if masculinity comes with many layers and components, then it means that nobody really would have all the elements in perfection. But to get a man who would become an epitome of masculinity would be a man that has a really good balance between some of the aspects. So I'm not going to get too much into literature on defining what masculinity is. I'm just going to be flowing from the dome, from my head. So one of the aspects, obviously, the common one, which is respected by any layman out there in the streets. Everybody respects a physically strong man, a guy that can fight, a guy that can kick ass. So that is a given. So the other elements, obviously, then would be your mental fortitude, which comes. They need to complement. So you have your physical strength, everything in the physical, generally in spirituality, everything in the physical needs to be complemented in all spheres of life, because in the African concept or worldview, a human being is never just your flesh, and you are it doesn't matter which cosmology one looks into, whether it's the Congo, the Southern African, the ancient Egyptian. A man is made up of various layers of being. So your physical likeness or presence does not fully define your being or humanity. And most people will say that your physical is merely a tent, a temporal manifestation of who you are. For we are eternal. We were here before we were born, and nobody is going to tell us we have a final destination when we die. But anyway, because life is a cycle. So now, since masculinity, the layperson will see a guy well built, is out there in the gym, or he might not necessarily be well built, but he's very strong and is a very skilled fighter. People will always respect that, because that is an essence of masculinity. It's a part of it, which Samson had to the max, according to the legend, the biblical legend. Now, the other elements are, like I said, one's mental fortitude. It's your spiritual strength, your center. And masculinity is mostly represented by a rock, or something rather immovable, in the sense that it's established. So if you have a rock, storms can come. Not that rocks are not affected by storms, but they're not tossed to and fro by winds, and you'll find the rock where it is at the end of the storm, even though it may have been touched and affected by a storm, but it will not be moved from its position, and its position representing one's standpoint, one's values, um, one's culture, if I may put it like that. So, going into the story, Samson, uh, in the title, I say the biblical allegory of lost black masculinity, which may sound like a paradox, because to those who actually view masculinity only from a standpoint of physical strength. But Samson actually represents the lost masculinity in black men in the world today. I've seen most people have seen the tweets where they show, I think on the racetrack, where they'll show Caucasians on the floor at the end of the race, and they would show these tall, very black, strong East Africans standing, while these Caucasians are dead from the race. And you'd see the caption, "How on earth did they conquer us?" Or colonizers or whatever. And we look at boxing, for example, or any sports. Europeans have actually surrendered that. They know that they cannot match the physical power. I'm just talking in general. It's not going to be individual to individual. Black men and women have shown, well, since the show is really about masculinity, I'll just stick to black men for now, not discriminating, um, have demonstrated that they are, you know, quite the dominant male group in the world. And every race has actually submitted to that. Even people have even alluded to the fact that the story of King Kong is about a black man and his love for a white woman. I don't think I've seen the movie, but I do. I've seen shots or snippets of the movie. So that story, I think, also aligns with the story of Samson, because in that movie, if that's since I haven't seen it, but it does make sense from some of the shots that I've seen that King Kong is undefeated. Armies, he can take down fighter jets and all these things, but his weakness is this white woman. And so I would presume, since I haven't seen the movie, that somehow at the end of the movie becomes his snare or the bait that they use to defeat him or take him down. So when we look at the story of Samson, it's basically looks quite identical to that. So Samson in the legend meets falls in love with a Philistine girl, and her name is Delilah. So Samson has the seven locks, which are the where his hidden strength lies. His hair has never been cut before. So so falls in love with this Philistine girl, and the Philistine girl is a metaphor for having so much love for uh, things of from the enemy camp. You know, she represents um, the beauty, because as women represent beauty, he is in love with the beauty of her enemies. You know, she is a Philistine woman would definitely be the standard of beauty for Philistine human beings. So the beauty of a Philistine, if people would go to the Philistines and say, "Show us your beauty," they would bring a Philistine woman. So he falls in love. Metaphorically, that represents the beauty of Philistine culture. You know, the essence of their beauty. So this woman realizes how much this brother has so fallen in love. I call him a brother because I know he's not a real character, but I call him a brother because he had locks, and only our hair can form locks organically. Of course, with other scientific interventions, other people with wavy hair can have locks today, but they cannot grow like we can grow locks. Their hair does not lock like that. So Samson falls in love with this Philistine woman. The Philistines have fought with him and they've realized we cannot defeat this guy. This guy is a one man army. He defeats one of the toughest ranks that we have. And they've tried everything to take him down, but with one hand, as one man, he takes them down. So, but they realize, but this guy, yeah, we can't defeat him. Can we look at other avenues? Because we're not really gonna defeat him physically. We're not gonna go toe to toe with him on a physical basis. So where else can we defeat this guy? And they realize, no, he's in love with the beauty of Philistine. And so they they find his weakness, because love then translates into a weakness in that sense. So because he's in love with this woman, then they use this woman. They call her up and say, "Look, your boyfriend." And she's like, "Oh, well, he's just a dude that I'm, just hanging out with, just hook up." And they're like, "We need to." we need to take him down. You know, he's our thorn. He's a thorn in our flesh. He's a problem. Because of him, Israel cannot be taken down. We don't even get to fight the army of Israel. We're just fighting this one guy. And she's like, "All right, cool. What can I do for y'all?" I'm like, "No, just go and find out. Just go and ask him. Since you are his weakness, he's not gonna tell us. He'll just whoop our asses. He'll probably come back in pieces. Ask him. Find out where his strength lies." And so she goes to Samson, and as a mental recollection, I don't remember how many times he lied to her, because at first he lied and said it's this, and then she tried what he had told her was his weakness. She took that away and then called the Philistine army, and then they attacked, and he destroyed all of them and killed so many of them in the fight. And then they went back to her and they're like, "You are messing with us." And she's like, "But that's what he told me." They're like, "No, you gotta do better than that." And so she went again. He lied to her. I just can't remember exactly how many lies he told her. If it was 3 times before he told her the truth. So eventually, um, she she goes to him and says, "You don't love me, um, because you have lied to me these many times." And when Samson hears the part about her doubting his love, because he really loved this woman, and there's something about his love which we're going to touch into. It lacks masculinity in his love, because there is a masculine way of love and there's a feminine way of love. So he then tells her the truth, that my power, my strength lies in these locks that I have. If you cut off my 7 locks and shave my head, I shall lose all my strength. And indeed, she did that. She cut the dude's hair and then called the army of the Philistines, and they went and captured the guy. And if I recall correctly, he his hair somehow grows while he's in captivity or something like that, over whatever period of time, and then he gains back a bit of his strength, and then he destroys whatever structure where he was, where eventually I believe he dies and they die as well, and that becomes the end of him. So where the masculinity part comes in is that he knew that he was gonna die because of the love that he has uh, for this Philistine beauty. But he could not, he lacked so he was no longer in, he was not in the area of, in that area of him loving this woman. And because any love that is, I mean, you cannot, you have to, the principle of love is first is founded on self-preservation. you know so any so-called love that is not founded on self-preservation is not masculine, and it's definitely rather psychologically twisted. So he knew that it's not like he was ignorant of what was going to happen to him. That's why he lied to her quite these few times. But then in the end, he lays down his life for this woman who didn't really care much about him, you know. And so this basically sums up the story of Samson. So, how does this apply to the lost black masculinity? It goes back to the question where, when we share history of martial arts started in Africa, all these military great military tactics came from Africa. The greatest militaries that have conquered nations outside of Africa, whether in Asia or wherever, used black men. One of the greatest warrior in Arabian history or in Arabic history was a black man called Anta, whose mother was a an Ethiopian concubine. She was, as Arabs used to capture African women and turn them into concubines because they never didn't marry them. They were like sex slaves. So the children became bastards. So Enter was such a mighty warrior that he was undefeatable. And the crazy part about it is he also had the Samson syndrome because he loved an Arab woman so much that he would basically do anything for her. In fact, when I think there's a time where he gets so depressed that he decides not to fight. It was something in relation to, I just don't recall exactly, with the woman that he loved. It's only he decided to come into the aid of the military at the time when when after his beloved Arab girl was captured, I believe. That's when he decided he's gonna go in and handle the business. So the that whole when you look at that whole history in throughout Africa, people then ask the question, well, so how come we were defeated? And the answer is the physical strength can be, you inherit it genetically and it continues down the bloodline, and also how generally the strongest human beings are found in Africa physically. And so that remains, it's not as easy to lose that. But then what we have lost as a people is that element of spiritual spiritual power, or spiritual masculinity. Because spiritual masculinity is, if before I take you to the spiritual one, we need to define it from the physical. The physical means you have that physical fortitude. You are